I'm reminded every year how little I like cold weather. Welcome to Mad on Books, where I talk about fantasy mostly, science fiction sometimes, and comics occasionally. So yeah, it's November, and it's starting to get cold again. We actually had a minus 8 degrees day here already, which is colder than it should be in November in Berlin. And we've already had 2 days of snow, one of which is today. So it's snowing behind the camera right now, which is a little depressing to me. November was an interesting month for reading because, of course, when it starts getting colder and when it's snowing, I'm not going outside as much. And I had quite a lot of working from home this month, which also means I do not have a 1.5 hour commute if I'm working from home. So I have a little more time for reading. I have a little less time for audiobooks. So what did I read this month? Well, last month I started House of Chains, part of my Malaz Everything read. And beginning of this month I finished House of Chains. It's in the Malazan books. In my opinion, it's one of the ones that's kind of all over the place. I mean, they tend to be all over the place anyway, but usually the all over the place feels like it kind of has a particular sense or a particular flow. With House of Chains, I remember this the first time I read it, and this was a reread, my first reread. It just felt like it was jumping all over the place. And there is, of course, a sense to it, but sometimes it's kind of hard to keep up and notice the sense to it. So House of Chains remains one of my lower ranked books in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's not bad. Everything in the Malazan Book of the Fallen is actually pretty amazing, but within that, not my favorite. Then Derry and maybe Alan will be happy to hear that I started my first trip into Discworld. I've always heard about Discworld. I've had friends who've been really into Discworld. Of course, it's quite famous and well known. And I had consciously always avoided it, to be honest. Why did I avoid it? I think I avoided it because when I was a teenager, I read everything Piers Anthony had published in Xanth. They're not very well-known books anymore, but they're fantasy and comedy. And I think when I started reading them, I was the right age, and I persisted in reading them until I was no longer the right age for them. They're not stupid, but they're kind of silly. And the silliness just kind of made me think, I'm not the right person for fantasy comedy. And fantasy comedy is what Discworld is. I can't compare them anymore to Piers Anthony and Xanth because I read those a very long time ago. But these, or at least this one, it's the only one I've read, felt maybe more intelligent than Piers Anthony's work. Wittier, more very creative wordplay. Terry Pratchett definitely had a mastery of the English language. And it is kind of absurd. It is kind of silly. It is quite funny. I didn't honestly have that many laugh out loud moments, but I did laugh a bit. And it was a lot of fun. I like the characters a lot. I like the way the story wrapped itself up. And I will be continuing, not sure exactly when, but I still have 2 more of these nice hardbound Discworld editions of the next 2 City Watch books. So I'll be continuing with those for sure. Then, of course, this is how my Malazan reread, or Malazan Book of the Fallen specifically reread, works. 1 book, and then a not Malazan book, and then a Malazan book. So next one was Midnight Tides. I remember when I first read this was, again, a reread. When I first read this, I was kind of pissed off with it because if you haven't read Malazan, one of the things that Steven Erikson does that is quite different than a lot of fantasy series is he doesn't give you the same characters all the way through the 10-book series, right? There is no single protagonist. There are, I think, in the whole series, there are over 600 named characters. Of those, maybe half of them you spend a fair bit of time with, enough to sort of get to know them. So there is a lot of jumping around. First book is here. Second book is on a different continent with mostly new characters. Third book goes back. Fourth book goes back to where the second book was. This one, just when you're kind of getting settled again with the characters you love and seeing how they're doing and what they're managing to get done, this one goes to a third continent that hasn't been in any of the books so far and has, I think, 100% characters that you've never seen before. So the first time I read it, it actually really kind of shitted me. I was kind of annoyed. I was waiting for some of my favorite characters to turn up as I was going through it, and they never do in this particular book anyway. But going into a reread, knowing what this book is and what seeds it plants, which become what later on in the series, I was really looking forward to this. Like, I was already, while I was reading House of Chains, I was like, okay, I want to get this one finished so I can start on Midnight Tides. It's really good, but it does take an adjustment because it is such a jump into totally new and different everything. But excellent book. I loved it the second time, even more than I ended up loving it the first time. And I'm looking forward to moving on in the series. And last but not least, I started Fire and Blood. I didn't get it finished in November. I'm still reading it. I'm about halfway through. I said this when I did my November TBR, that it is very generously typeset. Yeah, you can see that it has a very large, the typography is set very large. It's set with a lot of leading, so the space between the lines. This is, in this edition, this is why I hate talking about page length. This is a 700-page book. If you publish this in the kind of typesetting that you have in this, which is a 960-page book, this would probably be 350 or 400 pages. It would be a lot smaller. I've been reading this for 4 days, and not sitting there all day reading, and I'm already halfway through it. Yeah, it goes really quick. It's a much smaller book, actually, than it looks like. I'd like to see a comparative word count between this and a Malazan book. This has got to be a lot smaller. But I'm currently working through this, which is preparation for the Song of Ice and Fire reread for me, which is starting in January. Joanna and Jolien are hosting it. I think the majority of this discussion, at least the discussion that they're involved in, will be on the Grimoire Discord. I will post a link down in the description to that. You can join there. It'd be really cool if people joined. There are already quite a lot of booktubers, I think, joining, and a whole bunch of other people as well. So it looks like it's going to be a very healthy discussion, and I've already got some live chats with different booktubers scheduled for next year for talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. So what did I listen to this month? Because I was working from home and I didn't have as much commuting as I usually do, I was listening a little less. I probably could have done 3 or 4 books if I'd been working in the office every day, because I've got a lot of commuting to do if I do that. but I was kind of 75% working from home. So I only listened to 2 books, and I only finished one of them. The one I finished was given to me by the author, JCM Byrne, Joe. Joe, thank you very much. That was Wistful Ascending, of course. He gave me an Audible credit to listen to that. It was fun. I'm not sure if maybe I'm just not really the target audience. It's basically superhero space opera. Well, not really space opera, but it's Deep Space Nine meets Green Lantern. Kinda. There's a space station, and one of the guys on the space station is a superhero for reasons that are explained in the book. It had a number of things where I was not really crazy about it. Like, there's no explicit sex scenes, but there's a lot of flirting and talk about sex, and it struck me as kind of the way teenagers talk about sex. I have nothing against sex in books at all. Go back and look at my review of The Counselor. But yeah, it just seems some of that stuff seemed a little bit juvenile. It was also kind of an insta-love situation where the romantic relationship didn't really seem to have that much time to develop. And at some point, the action became a little bit repetitive feeling. It was like the hero, Rohan, goes out into space, fights someone, comes back beat up and has to heal, and immediately goes out into space and fights someone and has to come back and heal, and then goes out into space and fights someone. You get the idea. But overall, actually, I kind of enjoyed it. It was light. It was pretty fast. There's a fair bit of action. The story wasn't... It felt like it was maybe setting up a bunch of things which will become a story, but that particular book didn't really have a plot so much. It was like there was a thing that happened and had to be dealt with, and another thing happened and had to be dealt with. It didn't feel like there was a whole lot of ongoing sort of connected storyline happening. And the protagonist, Rohan, it felt like mostly he was reacting to things. It didn't feel like things were happening because he was doing something or had a plan. It was just weird thing happens and Rohan, the superhero, has to go deal with it. But it was fun. And in the end, I did enjoy it. It would have been better with a bit more story and a bit less teenage romance, sex talk stuff going on. But Joe, thank you very much. I did enjoy it. I'm interested to read the second one. I don't know if I would get all the way through it if it's more of the same, but we'll see. But either way, thank you very much for the Audible credit, Joe. And I started listening to 4321 by Paul Auster. I mentioned Paul Auster before. This is his latest novel, and it's interesting. Most of Paul Auster's novels look sort of like this. This was sort of his debut novel, the New York Trilogy, and it's about as thick as a finger and a half. This is 4321. It's about as big as 3 of his normal novels, and it's really interesting. I started listening to it, and I wasn't exactly in the right mood at the time. I wanted something a bit more fantastical, and then I started listening to Wistful Ascending. But it's an interesting thing. It's telling the story of one person's life from back to how their family originally came to America 2 generations previously, and it goes through, and each section, they're not really, well, I guess they're chapters basically, but they're quite large. Each section changes the way it's telling the story quite a lot. So the first one is a bit like a family history. The second one is told from that character's point of view when he was a child. So it's written in a very childlike style. And it goes on from there. It's interesting. I'll definitely finish it. I wasn't in the mood at the time, so I didn't quite finish it. But it's on Scribd, if you're using script and you're interested in audiobooks and you are interested in Paul Auster. As far as new books that I got, I basically had 3 exciting things. I already said Joe Byrne gave me an Audible credit for Wistful Ascending. Thank you, Joe. Cam Sinclair, who is an Australian author, he heard about my Oztober thing and that I was reading Australian authors, and he got in touch with me if I'd be interested in getting his book. And I got Shadow of the Winter Moon. He sent it to me. Thank you very much, Cam. It is book 1 of the Craven Chronicles, spelled with a K and another K. I have no idea how it is, but I have seen this on some people's channels. I think Patrick reviewed it, and the cover is interesting, and it sounds darkish. I don't know if it would be called grimdark, but I don't know anything. I never know if something should be called grimdark. So Shadow of the Winter Moon by Cam Sinclair. Thank you, Cam. And the third exciting new books thing is a bit too big to put in this video. I will soon, I'm waiting for the second of 2 boxes for a real book haul. And I want to do an unboxing. So I'm going to wait for that. I won't spoil it. Look out for an unboxing video soon with lots of books. Collaborations. Herr Professor Dr. Fantasy, Philip Chase, had me on Dear Dr. Fantasy, which was a lot of fun. I think we both really had a good time chatting for a couple hours. It was a pretty long chat. I really enjoyed that. There were no other collaborations. I didn't do a Friends on Books because of scheduling conflicts. I am doing one. As I record this, it'll be tomorrow. So this video will probably already be out after that live chat. So I'm doing a Friends on Books with Theo from The Rekindled Reader, Alex from Tall Guy Reads, and Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And the 4 of us will be chatting tomorrow afternoon about everything books. Today, as I'm recording this, so definitely after this video is uploaded, I will be on Joanna's channel talking with her and Angela from Do Unicorns Read on Joanna's, I think she calls it Why Read or Why Do You Read series. So I'm looking forward to that. That will be my time this evening at 7. So a couple of, this weekend is really full of collaborations. November was pretty sparse on the collaborations, and probably over December, there may not be any more. January, I've got a few planned, but I'm going to do a next year TBR video soon, so I'll leave all of that for then. A little bit about the channel. I have obviously been slowing down from the period where I was unemployed. Now that I'm not unemployed, I'm producing videos a lot slower. I haven't really hit the rhythm yet. And of course, that screws the algorithm. So I was kind of steadily growing with subscribers for a while. That slowed down quite a lot in November. But I'm now just above, I think, 470 something subscribers, which is not bad considering I started in August. If you want to help me hit the milestone of 500, post links to my channel, subscribe if you haven't, and put some likes down below. That would be really appreciated. I'm still thinking of doing something fun when I hit 500. If you've got ideas, let me know down in the comments, and we'll see how it goes. So how did your November look? What did you read? What did you love that you read? I'm not that interested in what people didn't like. Much more fun to focus on things that are fun. What are you doing over the holidays? I don't have that much planned. I don't have any family in Germany, and my family's quite far away, so I will be doing a relaxed, quiet Christmas by myself with a couple of friends maybe. But yeah, what are you up to? And what are you looking forward to reading next year? It's getting to that time of year where you start thinking about your plans. I hope you are well. I hope you have an awesome holiday season. And as always, keep reading awesome books, and I'll see you next time.